Okay, so today in Fortnite Creative we are going to build a drop trap using a trick tile trap, but this one will be a resettable trap. So 30 seconds after it being triggered, it will reset itself. It's going to work off a button. So when the unsuspecting player triggers the button, they fall into the damage zone and slowly lose health. And then 30 seconds after first launching and setting the trap off, the 3 missing tiles will reappear for the next unsuspecting player to trigger the button. And this tutorial will show you how to build this simple setup, so hopefully you guys can use it in your creative levels. Okay, so for this tutorial we've built a very simple platform with steps either side, just to illustrate how our trick tile trap is going to operate and how we're going to build a resettable trap. So if we go into creative devices and pick up the trick tile, it says trick tile is a trap that destroys the tile that it's attached to when it's activated. So let's equip that, and we'll attach it to one of the tiles on our walkway, and you can tell when it's a valid placement because it goes from red to blue. Now all devices in Fortnite, if you get close enough, there is the customize option that you can see appear. You have to be fairly close for this to pop up. You hit the customize option, you can change the attributes for the device that it is that you're putting down. So in this case there's an activation delay. We're going to lower this from 2 seconds, maybe make it half a second or so, just so we can see the activation time. Do you want it to trigger when the player comes in contact with that tile? We'll keep that at yes for the time being, just to demonstrate how this trick works. Everything else leave as default, and we'll play the game and we'll show how that works. So we've started our game, and the player runs up the platform we've built. Now you can see the device is not visible in the proper game. When you start a game, the player comes in contact with the trap piece, and the tile disappears and the player falls through the floor. It's quite simple at this point. You could build those just on their own for a simple full damage trap, obviously a lot taller than what we've built, but once the tile has been stepped upon, once the trap's been activated, that's it. It activates once and it doesn't return until the game's restarted. So what we have at the moment is a simple trick tile trap that the player steps on, it disappears, and the player falls 2 squares and incurs no damage. But what we want to build is a trap that the player can fall into, and the player takes damage. So we can pick up a lava tile piece, which by default will cause the player to lose 1 health every second or every split second or so, and we can put that below the trap. Now by default the lava attributes are actually turned off, so we need to go close, customize. Not a lot of attributes here, but turn the lava surface on, and that will force the player to bounce about uncontrollably, and it will also do the damage to the player's health. So we'll turn that on, and we'll save that. And we'll just increase the delay time that the trap fires over, just so we can see that. So we've started the game, and player steps on the tile, 1 second delay, falls onto the lava, is bounced about, and there's just 1 health on each bounce. So what we've got there is a very basic damage trap. Now what if we want to set the trap where it's not activated by a player walking over it, it's activated by a trigger or other event. So this is where we choose the button from the devices menu. And we're just going to place the button next to the trap. So the idea being that the player presses the button causes the trick tile trap to activate, and the player falls onto the lava tile below. Now we need to turn off the player activation attribute on the trick tile trap. So again, if we go into the attributes, customize, and open up the list of attributes, we need to switch off trigger on player contact. We don't want the player to open it up this time. We don't want the player to activate it. We want it to be done from a button, and we want it to trigger when it receives a signal over a particular channel. Now Fortnite Creative can have up to 75 different channels, and channels are the wires, if you will, that connect all the different devices in your level. So this trap is going to listen for a signal on channel 1, and when it receives that signal it will activate, and what we'll do is we will cause the button to send that signal on channel 1. So we'll set the trap on channel 1, and again customize on the button. You can set it if a particular team is only allowed to activate the button. We won't worry about that yet. But the most important thing is when interacted with, transmit on channel 1. So the button triggers on channel 1, the trap listens on channel 1, it hears the trigger, and it activates the trap. You can have a sound attribute to the button as well. I think it's a simple click sound, and then the interaction text. This is what the player will see when they go near the button. Now let's change that. Let's change that to something like, let's change that to trigger trap. So when the player goes near the button, they will see that message on the button. So now that button, when pressed, will send a signal to channel 1, the trap will fire, and the player will fall in the lava. So let's start the game, and we're up the steps to our platform. There's the button, but you'll notice this time we're on that trap, nothing's happening. We approach the button and you'll see the interactive text, trigger trap. The player presses it, and then for a second there's a delay till the trap activates, and the unfortunate player is trapped in this lava box that we've added the wall since last time. Okay, so back in Creative, we've got a basic drop into lava setup. But what if we wanted more than just that one tile to disappear on the button press? What if we wanted the tiles either side to disappear at the same time? Well, we can do that. So we go back into the devices gallery and pick 2 trick tiles, equip them, and then drop them down on either side. So we've now got 3 tiles, all with attached trick tiles. And again, we need to go in the attributes of the new ones we've placed, set the delay to match the original one, or 1 second. Trigger on player contact, no, we don't want that. We want it to trigger on channel 1. Now, hopefully this is where you're beginning to see the power of what you can do with channels in Fortnite Creative. 1 or more devices can trigger and transmit to 1 or more other devices. So in this case we've got 1 button that sends a signal out on channel 1, and it triggers all 3 of these drop traps. Now the lava's good, it takes away 1 health every sort of second, but what if we wanted something more customizable, more damaging? We wanted something better than lava. Well, we can find something like that. Most of the devices available in Fortnite are customizable. And if you can't find something to do what you need it to do, chances are there's another device somewhere else in the gallery that we can use. So we're going to go into the devices gallery and we're going to scroll down. We're going to choose damage volume, and now a damage volume is a device that causes damage to any player, vehicle or creature that may be in the area or the space of that volume. So we're going to place that down, and like any Fortnite device, it's got its attributes. We can go into those attributes and we can change the settings of that object, change the settings of the damage zone to how we want them to be in our level. So we're going to customize. And do you want the zone to be visible during your game? Do you want to see the orange glow? We'll set that to no. Do we want the base to be visible during the game? Again, let's set that to no. And then from here you can set the attributes of the size of the volume. So how many squares height do you want it? How wide do you want it? And how many squares backwards and forwards do you want it? Now, our trap above is 3 wide, so that's a 3. Set your damage type. Do you want to eliminate a player immediately falling into it, or do you want to cause damage over every second or so? So we're going to set it to damage over time. It's similar to the lava. But unlike the lava, we're going to take 20 health off our player when they're in this zone. Okay, we're going to affect the shield as well. We can have it affecting any AI creatures we have in the game. We can have it affecting players as well, which is what we want in this case. You can have it where it just affects the AI characters, but that's what we're going to set it to. So then if we zoom out a little bit, you can see the volume's changed. It's 1 height, 1 up, 1 forward and 3 across, and that sits nicely just below our traps. Now the reason we didn't put it to 2 height is because it sits at the exact same level as those 3 tiles there. So what can sometimes happen is as the player runs across those tiles at the top, their feet are just touching the very, very top of that damage zone, and they take damage, which is where we don't want the player to take damage. We want the player to take damage by falling into the zone. So let's just block it up a little bit so the player can't get out. We've got ourselves a horrible trap. And see what happens. We run up the platform. None of the 3 tiles are triggering because we have to trigger the button for the tiles to disappear. Approach the button, the trigger trap message appears. Press it. After a second we fall into the volume, and you can see that our player is taking damage at a rate of 20 hit points every couple of seconds. And there we go. The damage volume is doing as it should. So there we go. We have the basics of a trick tile trap that's just been activated. The problem is we've activated it, we've fallen in the trap, but the tiles don't come back. We have to wait until the game restarts for those tiles to come back. And what we're going to look at next is adding the ability for these tiles to come back and for the trap to be reset. So there's our setup, the drop trap into the damage zone, but we want to reset the 3 trick tile traps at the top after they've been activated after a set amount of time. So in order to do that, we need to go back into the device menu. We need to look for the timer device. As it says there, the timer can be controlled manually or with input from triggers. So we'll place the timer down, and as you can see it defaults to 2 minutes. So again, it's a device, we go up to it, we go nice and close, and we can customize the attributes. Now, what kind of duration do we want? We'll set this to 30 seconds, which means that the trap will activate, 30 seconds will tick along, and then the trap will go back to its original default setting Do we want it to auto start? No, we don't want it to auto start, because that means it will start on the beginning of the game. We want to start the timer, not the game. The team thing, let's not worry about that. We're not setting up a team game. Do we want it to complete just the once? Or the timer lock down when it's completed? We can leave that. When it's reached its endpoint, should it signal that it's completed? Yeah, we want it to signal it's complete at 30 seconds. Do we want to show the trigger? That's the drum-like thing. If you show it, players can come along and hit that trigger, and they can trigger the 30 seconds. So we don't want that to be seen in the game, not for the purposes of the trap we're designing. Do we want it to loop? No. When it finishes, when it gets to 30 seconds, we want it to stop. Do we want it to make a noise? No. There's no score, there's no activating team, we're not running a team game. Now this is a key bit. We want the timer to start when it receives a signal. Now we remember that the button transmits on channel 1. So we know that the button is pressed, the tiles disappear, that this clock will also pick up the signal on channel 1, and it will start the 30-second count because it's received that signal on channel 1. Now we want the timer to alert us when it's reached its complete stage, when it's hit that 30 seconds. So the attribute when complete, transmit on, we need to set. Now it's no good us setting that to channel 1, because all that will do is when it reaches 30 seconds it will do what the button's trying to do. It will just try and delete those floor tiles again. So what we need to do is we need to broadcast on a new channel, on channel 2. So when it starts, picks up the signal from the button, it receives that on channel 1, starts counting to 30 seconds, and when it's complete, it broadcasts on channel 2 to say, I've reached my 30 seconds and I've completed my countdown. And that's another key one. We want the timer to reset back to its original value, back to the 30-second count. Okay. Now we know that when the timer gets completed, when it reaches its 30 seconds, it will broadcast on channel 2. So what we can do is we can tell the timer to listen to channel 2 and reset itself ready to do the 30-second countdown again when it receives on channel 2. So the timer in effect is receiving the signal from channel 1, counting to 30 seconds, completing the 30 seconds, transmitting on channel 2, and then it's resetting itself ready for the next 30-second count to happen. Now what we need to do is make sure that the 3 trick tile traps are ready to reset themselves when they receive that signal from channel 2, indicating that the time is finished. So if we go into the attributes and go to the little beacon icon, you'll see there's more behaviors that these trick tiles can do. So we know that it's going to trigger and activate when it receives the signal from channel 1, but we also want this piece to reset back to default when it receives a signal on channel 2. So the timer will finish its 30-second countdown, it'll transmit on channel 2, and the trick tile trap will pick up on that and reset itself back to normal. So effectively what we've built is a self-resetting trap that can be activated over and over again in your creative game. So let's start the game and see if the triggering of the channels all work. So run up the steps, trigger the button, sends a signal on channel 1. Channel 1 activates the tile drop, we fall into the pit, but you can see the broadcast on channel 1 has caused the clock to count down, counting those 30 seconds. We respawn, If we go up the stairs, the tiles will be gone because they've not received the reset command yet. But once the clock hits 0, the reset command is picked up on channel 2. The floor tiles are back. We can go to the button, trigger the button, sends a signal on channel 1. The tiles disappear. We fall in the damage zone again, and the clock runs through another 30-second countdown. And the poor player has been killed in the damage zone once again. So hopefully this gives you something of an idea of how channels work in a game and how different devices can trigger different responses of other devices. It's a good idea that when you are designing more complex levels in this with multiple channels, you just keep a note, just write a note down somewhere of what each channel does, because you will forget. It will get complicated, especially on a level with lots and lots of traps. You don't have to have the button there. You don't have to have one, but you can have multiple buttons. You can have multiple triggers. You can have multiple things. But I thought this would be a nice, simple tutorial to show how we can have a trap that will reset itself after 30 seconds. Well, hopefully this video has helped you understand some of the basics of some of the Fortnite devices, how you can chain sequence of events together with channels, how you can create some simple traps. Hopefully you can use some of this in your own creative levels. Please share your creations with us, and thank you very much for watching.